Hello! Welcome back to my YouTube channel for Chromatic Nature. In this video, I will be going through the step-by-step process of dyeing with madder root. This is the color that I achieved with it this time. It varies from batch to batch, and obviously you can get different shades even on one garment. Madder root is pretty easy to work with. It smells pretty nice when you're boiling it, so that's a plus. Alright, so let's get to it.
The clothes that I'm dyeing today are made out of cotton spandex. The cotton is organic and it's unbleached, so it's in its raw state. I should also mention that I scour my fabric before I cut and sew the garments, so it has already been scoured. I might do a video later talking about the scouring process, but basically scouring is deep cleaning the fabric before you mordant it. If you want to see more of the tying, see my video called How to Tie-Dye with Natural Dyes. The first step of dyeing the garments is mordanting the cotton fiber. Mordanting helps the dye bond to the fabric, and it's a very important step. I'm using aluminum acetate, which is a metal salt. Besides being used as a mordant in fabric dyeing, it is also used medically as a topical anti-inflammatory skin treatment. However, you still shouldn't breathe it in when it's in the powdered state, so it's recommended that you wear a dust mask when handling it. It doesn't dissolve in water easily, so I'm first wetting it out with cold water and then adding boiling water and whisking it till it's dissolved. The amount of aluminum acetate that you should use is 5 to 10% of the total weight of the fibers that you're mordanting. Okay, now that the aluminum acetate is dissolved, I'm pouring it into a bucket filled with hot tap water. And now I'm adding the garments in there. And I just need to get them all thoroughly soaked. It's important to get the mordant to really penetrate the fabric as much as possible. I'm leaving the bundles in the aluminum acetate solution for 45 minutes. The other ingredient that I'm using in the mordanting is calcium carbonate, which is actually just chalk. It dissolves a lot more easily, so I just poured some boiling water in there and stirred it around and it's already dissolved. The amount of calcium carbonate that you should use to mordant is 5% of the total weight of your fibers. I'm removing the garments from the aluminum acetate solution. The garments have soaked up all of the aluminum acetate, so actually what's left over is just water. I'm going to mix the calcium carbonate solution into a fresh bucket of water. Now I'm putting the garments into this bucket and leaving them in there for 15 to 30 minutes. Making sure they get thoroughly soaked. Okay, 15 or 30 minutes has passed and it's time to take them out of the calcium carbonate solution, and I'm going to give them a quick rinse. You don't want too much calcium carbonate left over on the garments because it can change the colors that you get with some dyes by shifting the pH of the wad. After the quick rinse, I lightly wring them out, and that's it. Our mordanting part of the operation is complete. Now it's time to prepare the dye. I'm dyeing about 3 pounds of cotton fiber, and I'm going to use about 3/4 of a cup of madder root. I'm heating up a pot of water filled about halfway. I'm going to boil this dye for about an hour. It's important to keep an eye on the temperature of the water. The best temperature to boil the dye at is 180, and you shouldn't let it get hotter than 200. Any hotter and the red dye compounds will break down and the color will shift towards yellow. And looks like I'm letting it get too hot. Better turn it down. You might be thinking, is she using a food mixer attachment to stir everything? Yes, I am. Got it at a yard sale. By the way, yard sales are a great place to get tools for dyeing. You should try not to use anything you actually use in the kitchen for food prep, so yard sales, great place for all that. The dye is now ready, and here I make two mistakes. First mistake, my pot that I'm using as the dye wad is filled with too much water. Once I pour all of the dye solution in there, there's barely any room left. Second mistake, why is the pot only halfway on the plastic sheet? Natalia, what is that? So I'm just squeezing out a little more water from each garment before I drop it into the dye. You don't want them to be too saturated with water because then they're not going to absorb and draw the dye inside. And precisely here is the moment I realize that my wad is too full and I can't put all of the garments in there without it overflowing. My solution, scoop out some of the water. I'm not just pouring that extra dye out, I'm actually collecting it in a separate little container and I'm going to dye some of the little bundles in there separately. Now that I've made some more room in there, I can put all the remaining bundles in. I had to scoop some more of the liquid out. Still not enough room. Pushing around the bundles in there to make sure they all get thoroughly dyed. Alright, it's been several hours and I'm going to take the bundles out of the dye wad now. And now it's time to untie the tie-dyes. I'm only going to show you a couple headbands right now. If you want to see the garments that I tie-dyed in more detail, watch my video how to tie-dye with natural dye. Now that the tie-dyes are untied, I'm going to hang everything up and let it cure outside for a couple hours. Now that everything's cured for a while, I'm gonna rinse it out to get all of the madder root little particles off the garment. You can prevent getting all the particles on your garments by either using a dye bag in the dye wad or filtering the dye solution as you pour it into the dye wad. I didn't do either of those things, so there's lots of little madder root pieces all over my garment. Now that everything is rinsed, I'm going to toss everything into the washing machine and use Dharma Trading Professional Textile Detergent to wash them. I'm setting the washing machine to normal wash with cool water. The washing cycle is done, but I'm not drying it yet. First, I'm going to treat these items with fixative. I'm using Dharma Trading Dye Fixative. For solid color items, you should use the fixative before you wash the garments, but in the case of tie-dyes, you actually want to use the fixative after the first wash. I let everything soak in the fixative for about an hour. I know right now it looks like the garments got darker, but that's because I forgot to turn the light on. And they're going back into the washer for a final rinse. Now that that's done, I'm putting them into the dryer. And now that they're dry, I'm ironing them. Ironing actually helps further set the dye. Here's the final product of my labor. Some mistakes were made, but the color came out pretty good, and I think overall this was a success.
Thank you for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. To see more videos about dyeing using natural dyes, please subscribe and check back for more videos.